Hi Senior High, welcome to our virtual lesson in reading and writing skills. Today, we will have our lesson 2 in which we will talk about the patterns of development. Prior to that, we will talk about the topics necessary for you to understand it. Lining up our topics about the writing process, parts of a paragraph, qualities of a good paragraph, the means to achieve coherence, and the patterns of development as the last part of our discussion. Without further ado, let us start our lesson entitled Patterns of Development. Writing is a difficult task, especially among students like you. Most of the times, even the choice of a topic is challenging. People associate writing to authors, poets, musicians, and playwrights. We can define writing as a skill, a process, and an art. Writing is a skill that all of us must acquire. According to Noonan in 2003, writing is the combination of mentality, inventing ideas, thinking how to express them, and organizing them into sentences and paragraphs that will make sense to a reader. Writing is also a process. It involves steps and methods to create a piece of writing. And finally, writing is an art. It is an art because you use your imagination and creativity to express the emotions that you would like to share with your readers. While most of people think that writing is a talent, writing can be learned and mastered. Let us now talk about the writing process. Before you decide to begin writing, there are certain ways that you can consider which will help you to write better paragraphs or essays. Look at the writing process and learn how to arrange your ideas with coherence and unity. The first step in writing process is pre-writing. Pre-writing is a planning stage. Here, you explore possible ideas or topics, choose your audience, and determine your purpose for writing. Pre-writing activities can help you generate possible topics by taking an inventory of your interest, experiences, and ideas. Here are some strategies that you can try in generating a topic for your writing. First is the listing or brainstorming. Listing or brainstorming is the jotting down all the ideas that pop into your head about your topic. As you go through your list, you can try to look for connections between the ideas, whether they are big or small. The second strategy in generating a topic is free writing. Free writing is writing whatever comes into your mind about the topic for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Here, you should not worry about the punctuations, spelling, or sentences. Third strategy in generating a topic is clustering or concept mapping. Clustering or concept mapping is a technique that lets you narrow a broad topic into more specific topics. You take a piece of paper, write at the center, and connect ideas that are related to the broad topic. Next is journal writing. Journal writing is more personal writing where you jot down your experiences, your thoughts, important events that took place on a particular day, or anything that creates an impression in your mind. You can use your journal to look for possible topics when you give a writing activity or assignment. And finally, the last strategy in generating a topic for writing is outlining. Outlining is listing down ideas from broad to narrow or from general to specific. It helps you organize your thoughts linearly and makes it easier for you to connect ideas together. Again, Those are different strategies that you can try in generating a topic for writing, and that is the first step in writing process. Pre-writing is the planning stage. The second stage is drafting. Drafting is putting your ideas into sentences and paragraphs. You arrange your ideas in such a way that allows the reader to understand your message. The next stage, which is revising, is how you rearrange, you add, or you remove words or sentences or paragraphs from your draft. Here, you review your thoughts, reconsider your arguments, strengthen your evidences, or redefine your purpose. Good writing will undergo multiple drafts and revisions, then move on to editing. Editing and proofreading is the fourth step in pre-writing. Editing and proofreading involves looking at your work carefully, making sure that paragraph or essay has correct grammar, spelling, and punctuations. Remember that writing is a recurring process. If you are in the editing stage and you found out that there is a missing evidence, you can always go back to drafting or even pre-writing to check if you have included the ideas which you collected from the pre-writing stage. If you are already confident that you have organized your thoughts in a meaningful way, then you are now ready to publish your work. And publishing is the last part of the writing process. Publishing is submitting your work to your teacher or sharing it into a website so others can see it. Now, let's talk about the parts of a paragraph. We will use a sample paragraph for us to identify easily the parts of a paragraph. Let's start first with the paragraph that we're going to use. Now, let's talk about the different parts of a paragraph. The first part of a paragraph is what we call the topic sentence. Topic sentence shows the main idea of the paragraphs. Here, it talks about biggest idea which will be the topic of the entire paragraph. Here in the sample paragraph, the topic sentence talks about the possible reasons why the father or why father has an excellent health. Now, let's move on to the second part of the paragraph, known as supporting details. Refers supporting details, pieces of information that provide specific details to the idea. Here, in the given example, the supporting ideas are connected back to the topic sentence, in which it explains why the father has an excellent health condition. And lastly, the third part of a paragraph is what we called the conclusion. Conclusion is a restatement or a summary of the ideas discussed in a paragraph. Here in our given sample paragraph, our conclusion is the same statement of the topic sentence. However, it is expressed using different words. It says there that despite his age, the father, he is in a good health condition, which is actually the same idea with the topic sentence. They have expressed the same thoughts but in different words, and that is the function of a conclusion. Just a simple restate. Now, let us talk about the qualities of a good paragraph. There are three qualities of a good paragraph. First is unity. When we say unity, it means oneness. A paragraph that is good has unity in its paragraph. It means that there is a oneness of idea discussed in the paragraph, or it means that there is only one topic being discussed in a paragraph. The second quality of a good paragraph is coherence. Coherence is about the logical flow of details between and among sentences and paragraphs. It focuses on creating a connection between one idea to another idea. Third quality of a good paragraph is development. When we say development, it refers to the strategy used in developing the idea. Development is about how you will discuss the topic in a paragraph or the flow of a discussion in a paragraph. Now, going back to coherence, there are various ways to achieve coherence in a paragraph. First is by using transitional device. Transitional device refers to words and phrases that connect and relate ideas, sentences, and paragraphs to have a logical flow of ideas as they signal the relationship between sentences and paragraphs. The main purpose of transitional device is to make sure that there is a smooth transition of ideas between sentences and paragraphs. Let me show you some examples. There are ways you can make boring tasks more pleasant. For instance, listen to music or sing along with the music while you work. The transition word indicates an example. The transitional device here is the phrase "for instance." There is a connection from one sentence to another, in which the first statement talks about the ways to make a boring task more pleasant, and the use of transitional device connects it to another idea to another sentence, in which listen to music or sing along with the music while you work is another idea related to the first idea, which is connected by a transitional device. For instance, another sentence that use transitional device here is, achieving your goals in life may seem difficult, but with hard work, determination, and industry, everything can be possible. The transition word indicates contrast. And what is that transition word? The use of the word but. If you could see, the first statement talks about achieving your goals in life may seem difficult. However, the next idea gives a contradicting statement to the first sentence. And it says there that with hard work, determination, and industry, everything can be possible. So that is the use of transition device. And the use of transitional device is one way to make your paragraph coherent. The next way to achieve a coherent paragraph is by using parallel structure or parallelism. Parallelism is the use of similar pattern or grammatical form within a sentence or paragraph to achieve paragraph coherence. To understand it better, let's use an example. During a pandemic, most people are afraid, anxious, and cautious. In this example, parallelism was shown by using adjectives consistently. The words like afraid, anxious, and cautious explain the feelings of people during pandemic. Parallelism is shown by these three consistent use of adjectives. Another sentence here is, reading a book, listening to music, and watching movies are just some of the things that people do to pass away the time. In the second example, there is a consistent use of gerund verb with ing form that functions as subject in a sentence. Gerund like reading a book, listening to music, and watching movies are the so-called gerund, and it is, or the sentence has shown parallelism by using gerund form. Another way to achieve coherent in a paragraph is by using pronoun reference. Pronouns must always refer clearly to the noun they represent or the antecedent. Remember that antecedent is the noun referred by the pronoun used in a sentence. To understand it better, let's use this example. The teacher listened to Ella and she did not understand what she was trying to say. There is a confusing use of pronoun here. The highlighted word, which is she, the pronoun she, is confusing when it should not be. If we will change it to a better sentence, Mr. Rojas listened to Ella and he did not understand what she was trying to say. The antecedent of he is Mr. Rojas and the antecedent of she is Ella. There is no pronoun confusion here in this sentence. We know who we are referring to when we said he and who we are referring to when we said she. Another example here is the students are shouting at one another when his teacher entered the room. The pronoun his here is quite confusing. We don't even know who is being referred by the pronoun his here. Now, to make it better, the students are shouting at one another when their teacher entered the room. So we can conclude here from the sentence that the antecedent of there is the students. Now, let's move on to the fourth way to achieve coherence in a paragraph. The fourth strategy is the use of repetition. Repetition is the intentional use of a word or phrase to emphasize a point. Now, let's have an example for us to understand it better. If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. That is a sample passage or lyrics from the song Count on Me by Bruno Mars. If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Okay, so much for that. Now, note that there is a repetition of the phrase if you ever find yourself in the sample lyrics taken from the song Count on Me. So the purpose of repetition is to give emphasis or highlight to the idea of that phrase. Another example here is, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct to other way. So that is a passage coming from Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. So if you would notice, the repeated phrase here is the phrase it was the. Okay, so it gave emphasis to the passage and it highlighted the idea that the speaker is trying to recall some of memories from his past. So that is the use of repetition. And last but not the least, for us to achieve coherence in a paragraph, we have logical order. Logical order refers to organization of details used to support the main idea of the paragraph. Organization means it's how you put your ideas together. You can organize the details of your paragraph by using chronological, spatial, importance, sequential, or procedural. When we use chronological, our ideas are arranged in time sequence. We use words or phrases like yesterday, last year, in 2020, or morning, and a lot of examples of that. Now, example, when you're writing or when you are telling a vacation trip that happened last summer, you can use the chronological order. Next is the spatial. Spatial is a development or an order that is arranged according to space relationships. So it talks about the near, far, inside, outside, left, right, or top, bottom. So we can use the spatial order when telling a direction of a place. That's just an example of that. Next is the use of importance. The use of importance order arranged based on significance, or which is the most important, the least important, or the least familiar, or the most familiar. So example here is when you are writing a paragraph about your priorities in life. So you will be the one to arrange your ideas based on its relevance. And last but not the least, we have the sequential or procedural. When you use the sequential or procedural order, you arrange it according to a step-by-step process. Here, we can use words like first, second, next, afterwards. So this one is good when you are trying to give instructions how to do something, like how to cook something. That's the best way to use the sequential or procedural order. Now, to give conclusion to our lesson number 2, let's now talk about the patterns of development. Your paragraphs are developed based on the purpose of your writing. Different patterns can be used to organize your details. Here are some patterns of paragraph development according to the writer's intention. First is narration. Narration tells a story or recount an event. Telling a story can be an informative and persuasive way of swaying your readers to your point of view. Now, here is an example of a narrative paragraph or a paragraph using narration. In the sample paragraph, the writer talks about how he or she experienced or remembered the very first and only time he or she traveled long distance on a train. So this one used the narrative paragraph because it tells a story of a past experience. And if you would like to tell a story of your experience, you can also use the narrative paragraph. The second pattern of development is description. Description draws or creates in words a picture of a person, place, object, feeling, or event. The writer uses a careful selection of details to make an impression on the reader. Here is an example of description paragraph or descriptive paragraph, and it says here how the writer describes Goldilocks bear-like stuffed toy. So the writer here used words that would make this object as being described visually vivid to the reader. The third pattern of development is definition. Definition gives the meaning of a term or concept. Definition can be used to provide an interpretation of a vague, controversial, or misunderstood term. It is also used to explain an abstract concept, to define a new or unusual term, or to entertain by presenting the interesting history, uses, effects, or example of a common word or expression. This example paragraph explained and defined what a structural query language is. The fourth pattern of development is known as exemplification or example. Example illustrates a concept in real-world terms and provides readers with an image of a concept that they can relate to. Examples can make general statements specific and more convincing because they explain and clarify unfamiliar, abstract, or difficult concepts for the readers. This paragraph explains some example of the Filipino custom. The fifth pattern of development is known as classification and division. When we say classification, it groups a number of things into categories. It sorts a group of similar subjects according to some quality or characteristic that they share in common. While when we say division, it deals with one subject only. It divides the subject into its component, parts, pieces, or sections for closer examination. In short, when we say classification, collects small ideas and put it into whole or put it into a whole idea. While when we say division, it deals with one big idea and divide it into different ideas. So we can say that classification is from specific to general, while division is from general idea to specific ideas. Take a look at this example. Types of email. Here in this sample paragraph, the writer classified email into 3 categories. Therefore, he or she used classification division pattern of development. The 6th pattern of development is known as comparison and contrast. When we say comparison, it shows how two subjects are similar. And when we say contrast, it shows how two subjects are different. People compare and contrast in both writing and life. Comparisons serve 2 purposes. First is to explain differences between subjects or to persuade readers that one subject is superior than others. Here is how you will organize your comparison-contrast paragraph. You can use 2 patterns in comparing 2 objects. It can be by block pattern or point-by-point pattern. In the block pattern, you have to introduce first your topic. You provide the body by explaining first about the object A, and then you have to give the point of contrast 1, 2, and 3. And also, you will have to discuss about your second object and give the points 1, 2, and 3, and finally draw your conclusion. While for point-by-point pattern, you will have this kind of system. You have to write the introduction, the body, then you have to explain the point 1 and compare object A and object B. Explain the point contrast 2 and compare object A and object B. And explain point of contrast 3 and explain or compare object A and object B, and then finally draw your conclusion. So you may take a look at these 2 example paragraphs for you to understand better the 2 patterns, which are the block pattern or the point-by-point pattern. And finally, last but not the least, the cause and effect method. Cause and effect method of development is when the writer analyzes the reasons for an action, event, or decision, or analyze resulting consequences to support a point. Cause and effect essay focus on why things happen and what happens as a result. A cause is a reason for something that happens for an explanation to why some effects occur. And an effect is the result of certain events or causes. An effect may be the result of one or more causes. Writers often combine cause and effect to explain why something happens. How will you organize your cause and effect paragraph or essay? Here you can give emphasis as to whether you will highlight the effect or the cause. If you would like to highlight the effect or the cause rather, if you would like to highlight the cause, you have to give emphasis on explaining the different causes and then the effect. And if you would like to explain or to give emphasis on the effects, you have to explain first the main cause and the possible effects afterwards. You may take a look at the sample paragraph so you will understand better the difference between how a cause is described or how a cause is explained or how an effect is explained. So those are the 7 patterns of development. We have the narration, description, definition, exemplification, classification and division, comparison and contrast, and cause and effect. Now let's review all the lessons that we have tackled in this video lesson. The writing process, parts of a paragraph, qualities of a good paragraph, means to achieve coherence, and also pattern of development. The writing process are pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading, and publishing. These are the parts of a paragraph: the topic, sentence, supporting details, and conclusion. The qualities of a good paragraph are unity, coherence, and development. Now, to achieve coherence, we can use transitional device, parallel structure, pronoun reference, repetition, and logical order. And for us to achieve development, we can have narration, description, definition, exemplification, classification and division, comparison and contrast, and cause and effect. I hope you have learned many things during this session. Write it now in our comment section. See you on our next video lesson. Just a bit reminder, don't forget to answer the pre-assessment 2 and post-assessment 2. And also, write your attendance by writing your complete name, grade and section, and the things you've learned from our lesson. That's all for today. Thank you so much.